Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it is time for my client Josh's vlog. And his training got spaced out a little bit for this training week due to a tournament he had to go to. But we're back in the groove, and obviously volume is kept pretty low when he's kind of in his competitive season. Because again, he's got to fight, and again, I want people to understand this is an example of an athlete whose strength and hypertrophy are not primary goals. Okay, he is a weight class fighter. He competes very seriously in BJJ, works as a trainer, and so accordingly, we keep his volume somewhat moderate. I keep his volumes very high on the speed work. We do max effort work. We only do 2 max effort lifts a week. We'll do an upper and a lower lift, and he did a bench press this week. And keeping in mind that, again, his technique's not always going to be perfect from a powerlifter perspective. A couple things I'd like to fix in there that I saw on his bench, but force production is everything for him because he's a fighter. His volume needs to be recoverable. He needs to be able to gain some muscle, needs to gain strength. We need to gain speed, but he has to do so in a way that he can recover from what he's doing. So our training is very, very simple. If you look at what he did there, he did some benching, right? We did a max effort bench. We did a floor press. He did some inverted rows. We do band press downs. That's his upper body. That is max effort day. And I know a lot of people look at this and they're like, oh, that's not very much work. Are you sure that's enough? Well, here's the thing that I would ask you. Look at his overall size and say, well, yeah, that's enough volume to grow from. Is it optimal? No. Is it enough to see gains? Absolutely. Absolutely. 3 sets of hard floor press, 3 sets of hard inverted rows, and some band press downs is enough to grow off of. Now, keeping in mind, this is only his lowest volume day for upper, right? Because we're going to have more volume technically on the speed day. All right. So, but the volume is not very much because he's got to recover. He has to roll and train and fight 2 hours a day. All right, so max effort lower this week, we did a box squat, okay? Box squats, and we use a lot of box squats for guys like this. Why? Has the highest rate of force production. So if we have that higher rate of force production, I'm more concerned with that for a fighter, than I am having them practice a lot of back squatting, but we still do some back squatting. But again, if we're going to look at this, the data shows us that box squats have the highest rate of force production. And accordingly, for someone like him, it makes a lot of sense to rely on them heavily, not just for the speed work, but we'll do quite a bit of them on his max effort work. And the amount of box squats I do for max effort really depends upon the goals of my lifter. But in this case, he ramps up. He gets a good training max. Right? We get a good training max off of it. Like right there, and then we're done. Good quality rep. We go to a weight that he could get a double with if he were to grind a second rep, and that's where he stops. He notes it and keeps up with it. All right, afterwards, we focus really on posterior chain. He does good mornings, and we do glute ham raises because he has access to one. And then, of course, I have him do some band pull-throughs. I don't have a lot of quad work in here right now simply because his knees are going to get beat up with what he does. I'm not, so again, he's going to tend to oftentimes have inflamed knees, inflamed patellar tendons. I'm not worried about building that a large amount outside of our speed work. Our speed boxes, our speed pulls will cover that to some extent. When we go into a phase to where he's training less and he wants to really focus on hypertrophy a little more, that's when we use that time to start adding extra squatting, leg pressing, single leg exercises, whatever we need to do to bring that area up. But in the meantime, we need to get the most bang for our buck that's going to work within his recovery, that's going to give him the most benefit out on the mat, give him the most benefit in tournaments. It's going to give him the lowest injury rate, and that's going to be hip extension. It's going to be a heavier focus on the posterior chain. So that's why we do what we do for him there. So it tends to be, all posterior chain movements, with a very modest amount of volume, but with high quality. All right, speed benching, we use bands. Now, for fighters, We are always going to use bands for speed work. You need to find a way to hook up bands. You need to get bands, have light bands. We're going to use accommodating resistance with a heavy bias towards band work for someone who needs to fight. Why? We need to develop that high rate of force production, and bands do that better than anything due to the stretch reflex they initiate, due to the sort of the way that they change the acceleration curve, right? They give us the most speed. So we also, of course, always do the band work for the triceps. Again, he gets beat up elbows. Keeping those tricep tendons and just the elbows healthy in general is a good idea. And I already love these for a lot of my lifters. I live on these things. But for him, we do a lot of them also. Okay? We do a lot of these also for the same reasons. And there may come a point even with him to where I start incorporating some band work on like leg extensions with bands like this for the same way. Because again, it can over time do the same thing for the patellar tendon. And when I have a contact sport athlete like this who is going to bang their knees up a lot, bang their elbows up a lot, it's a very, very useful tool. Because again, just those stronger tendons supporting those areas is not a bad idea. Not a bad idea at all. All right. So yeah, we do the speed work with bands if possible. Now for his speed pulls, he doesn't always have a good setup because he doesn't have band pegs on the rack. And if he had time to set up more dumbbells and stuff, I might say, well, let's set up some dumbbells and do this. He's ran into some issues with it, but there may come a point where I say, well, look, see if you can attach to that rack, get some heavy dumbbells behind you, and see if we can do the speed pulls with bands. Because it may benefit him to do that. But then afterwards, of course, we do the same thing as before. We want to do good mornings. We do glute ham raises. Now, if he had access to a reverse hyper, we would absolutely use it, but we don't. But even then, having access to that glute ham raise, because of what it can do for overall hamstring development, and we start thinking about knee stability, we think about, again, athletes like this who are going to have their knees hit a lot. They're going to be twisted. They're going to be pulled upon. That extra hamstring development is worth a lot. It's worth a whole lot for injury prevention. It's worth a whole lot during competition, because if he gets taken out in a match early, we run into some sort of knee issue, a ligament issue in that area. We pull a ligament, we pull a hamstring, his knee gets too banged up too early in a tournament, he may be done for the day, right? It could be the difference between being able to finish or not. So we want that area strong. We're always going to put a lot of extra work into hamstrings for someone like this. And it's the same with field athletes who have to turn and pivot a lot. I want their hamstrings to be overdeveloped. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.